Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I am your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really glad to have with me once again Auryn Bebek. Auryn is the Executive Chairman and Director of Auryn Resources, and many of you know him. You've heard him before on this show, but for the benefit of those who are not familiar with him, let me just mention a few of his achievements. He's been over 18 years of experience in financing, foreign negotiations, and acquisitions in the mineral exploration industry. His understanding of the capital markets and ability to position, structure, and finance companies that have been associated with has been instrumental in their success. Indeed, he's had a couple of very noteworthy successes. He and his partner, he co-founded Canada Resources, which was sold to Agnico Eagle in a very bad market, I might add, at a nice gain for yours truly. I had some shares of that. It's, I think, about the only thing that gained money in 2014 for me. And Auryn was also a co-founder of Keegan Resources, now Asanko Gold, and he is the co-founder of Torque Resources. That's another company that's I think has a great deal of promise. And of course, he also serves on a board of directors of Gold Standard Ventures, a company that I've covered in my newsletter in the past. So now with Auryn Resources, we're really looking forward to some great things from Auryn. Thanks for joining me again, Auryn.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Really appreciate being here.
Always good to have you with me because you always have a lot of interesting things going on, for sure. Auryn trades in New York and in Toronto under the symbol AUG. 90.2 million shares, I believe, is the number that I have, trading at $1.05 in New York earlier today. Ivan, it's been just a really tough market. And as I was just talking to Michael Oliver before you, somebody just crunched the numbers and recognized that in terms of the real price of gold, discounted for the inflation rate in the United States, gold is selling at a 50-year low. And, of course, I don't need to tell you, it's for the junior resource sector, it's just been a tough market. How is your management team responding to this current market reality?
Well, there's two things that go with that, and first and foremost, we've taken some pretty drastic austerity measures in terms of scaling back our burn rate considerably and becoming a lot more efficient. Our CEO, Sean Wallace, has taken a scale back in his in his salary. So has our CFO. And, we've ended a lot of very supportive consulting contracts just to be a bit more focused. So we're stretching our dollars a lot further. We've drilled some spectacular holes up at Committee Bay, which I'm sure we'll talk about. However, we're treating the market for what it is. Even though we have a lot of optimism, we see a change in the marketplace. We have certainly taken a hard line to, survive in the reality in the most efficient way possible for shareholders, which is what all companies should be doing at this time. Regardless of the optimism towards the gold market.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. You and I have been through enough of these things to know what happens to companies that don't. Committee Bay, it's just a huge target that you've got up there, and of course limited at this time in terms of how many months of the year you can work up there. You've completed your drill program this year. What was your objective there with that drill program, and what, I know you don't have assays yet, but what can you tell us from visualizing the drill core so far? What are your geologists thinking?
Well, it's the last 3 years prior to this year, it's been really, looking for the needle in the haystack because the majority of the rocks are covered by, let's just call it a layer of dirt. We call it till. And glaciers moved over that dirt on top of those rocks. So it's really, a masked targets that you're trying to find undercover. And I think a lot of the world's biggest discoveries will be found in difficult places undercover because the easy ones have been found. Now, the last 3 years, we've gone up there with a drill called a RAB drill rig, which is a rotary air blast drill rig. And what this does is it crushes the rock into little chips, and you fill bags of gravel that get separated. You split it in half, and you send half of it to the assay lab. The problem when you have a short season and you're drilling these gravel chips, you can't really tell if you're in the right rock or not. You have a very loose or very, very vague interpretation. So this year was the first year, as we described last year, if we made a discovery, which we did at Ivik, we drilled 12 meters of about 5 grams per ton. We said we'd go back with a core rig, and, as anticipated, that once you pull the core rig out and you get to see core versus a bag of gravel, you start to see what's really going on in the rocks. Is there veining? Is there, all the right minerals that would be associated with gold? And, I think for now, what we look at is some very basic logic factors that I think we all can relate with. The ice was moving from south to north, and there's a big shear zone, big bodies of rock that were sliding against each other, which melted and created a room for fluids to come into the rocks. Real simple. As the ice moved over the shear zone, it deposited a bunch of boulders down ice. Now, these boulders range from 0.2 to 186 grams per ton, with a lot of them in the 4, 5, 7, 20 gram per ton range, so averaging around 11 grams per ton if you use a couple gram cutoff, which is a great average to get out of these boulders. Now, there's two types of gold occurring or two types of rock that are hosting the gold in the boulders. We've drilled both of those rock in our core. So the rock that we drilled looks identical to the rock in the boulders that has gold in it, which all it does is it gives you, a good shot that there might be potentially gold in the drill core. If I was to summarize this in one phrase or two, it's real simple. There's two types of rock that you can drill with a core rig in your career as an explorationist. The kind of rock that is completely boring, dead, and not to expect any results. And the other kind is the ones that you lose about 4 hours sleep a night until you get assay results. And that's where we're at. We've pulled the pins and needles, type of core, and we see it over about a kilometer and a half is the distance we've tested. There's about 16 holes that we've drilled, and we certainly don't expect all 16 holes to run, but we're hoping to see 3 or 4 or maybe over a 500 meter width to start run out of that bunch of 16 holes, which means we have quite a few shots here to see some gold show up that's meaningful. Now, when you go up there with a core rig, it certainly points you in a lot of different directions. You can go in either direction. We don't know until we get results which is a better direction to go in. So, with the efficiency of not wasting too much money, you drill enough to see what happens before you go back with 4 or 5 drills and really put together a high grade resource. And where we're most excited is that we've hit a lot of veining in the core that's associated with rock around it that is seen in the boulders, and there's high grade in the boulders. So real simple, it's the best shot we've taken in 4 years. It's been a really long road to get here. What if it doesn't hit? Do we go back to Committee Bay? We will. We'd absolutely go back, but we're going to be more modest with future programs if these things don't run meaningful gold. There's so many other targets on that belt that we haven't got to yet. On the flip side, if we're successful here, shareholders will know between September 24th and August 15th, all the results will come back. The first half of the results will be back probably between now and the first few days of October. The balance will come back by the mid of October. I'd say that the second half were drilled with more confidence than the first half, but I couldn't tell you which rock looks better, and neither could the geologist. They both look spectacular. So there'll be a lot of really good shots here. And at the same time, we've just finished drilling Homestake Ridge in BC. So we have some really good looking rock that we've drilled there as well that we'll look forward to results in October as well. So a lot of results on the horizon.
Okay. Well, we'll certainly be watching with bated breath, no doubt about that. So with Homestake, anything you can comment on that in terms of what you're seeing? I think your objective there was to probably expand the resource because you do have a high-grade resource there already.
There's 3 deposits. They make up about 1.3 million ounces of 7.5 grams per ton gold and silver equivalent, which is a very rich deposit. And we focused this year on a place we had success last year called South Reef. There's about 100,000 ounces of about 13 grams gold and silver equivalent at South Reef, and we followed it to the north. Initially we thought we'd stay in tight, but like any shareholder, we looked for exposing a bit more than just a conservative step out. So we stepped out about 200 and 400 meter step outs to really give us a shot at opening it up considerably. And there's some rock there that has a shot, but again, it's really hard to say at this time. It's just nice to know that it's not dead rock we were drilling that we're not looking forward to. It's the other kind, the kind that you lose sleep on. So we have some exciting opportunities there as well.
So you're all for those kind of rocks that you lose sleep for and wait for the assays. And so I'm not probably going to be losing as much sleep as you, but I'm certainly going to be watching very carefully because I own a few shares as well. Now, listen, the other one that I really want you to talk about is Sombrero, the Sombrero Project down in Peru. And now you have several projects in Peru, but this is the one that you're most excited about. And you put out a press release on September 5th, you and quoting you as well as Michael Henrikson's, your structural geologist. You guys are really excited about this. I just read a quote from you in that in that news release. You said the opportunity for discovery at Sombrero is substantial. It is extremely well situated with excellent access to infrastructure, and all the results to date give us confidence that major gold, copper, skarn, and or porphyry bodies could be present. Talk to us about Sombrero. What are you doing there? What do you hope to achieve? You're just starting a drill program there now. First time, I guess, that target has been drilled into.
Yeah, this is a massive project. Sombrero was something, it took us about a year and a half to get access to the project, or everybody would have heard about it sooner. It has a lot of outcrop, which is different from Committee Bay. And since we've had the property, the government actually put high-tension power lines over top of our property. And we joke to each other that if we find a deposit or a mine, that we just plug in the extension cord. And, it's not too many places in the world that you'll see that kind of infrastructure blessing a project alongside a highway and a town nearby. So you have people, roads, there's water, and obviously the power, which is generally a huge cost. So what I've just described there is profitability, and this will make whatever we find highly profitable. Now, the second thing that really, gives us confidence here is the amount of copper and gold we've sampled on surface. And if you look back at any of our releases about Sombrero earlier this year and a year and a half ago when we had our first look, you're going to see a lot of multi-gram gold and a lot of multi% copper, up to 17% copper, up to 193 gram per ton gold. Now, those numbers are obviously, outliers, and we don't expect to find a deposit that rich. That would be, beyond incredible. What we're looking for in those numbers is a high metal budget. So we have a really big system identified by two really important rocks touching each other, and an event occurs when they do in these types of systems, and we can see the metal budget for gold and copper being extremely high. And most recently, we had a chance to do something called geophysics, and not to get too complex, but we use electricity. We put a charge into the ground. If it hits a rock that's called a sulfide that may hold gold or copper, the rock will hold the charge for a few milliseconds. You can measure that, and it'll give you a signal to surface. And what we found in our first target, and there's about 4 of them, we haven't gotten to the other 3 yet, was a 3.5 kilometer long target. That's about 600 meters wide. And on surface, about 500 meters away, we trenched about 100 meters of 0.46% copper and gold equivalent, as well as 100 meters of 0.3% copper and gold equivalent. Now, those trenches aren't overly high grade, and a lot of people would agree with me there, but what's important to know about those trenches, and if you see our press release, there's images that show it, these took place in rocks that have been rained on for millions of years. And as you know, copper is water soluble, so we certainly expect the grade to go up quite a bit as you get into the fresh rock. And so the trenches are spectacular by terms of width and consistency of grade. They're 500 to 1,000 meters away from a target that's 600 meters wide. So that's the kind of holes we're going to get to drill, is from behind this trench to a target that, call it 500 meters away, that 600 meter wide target. And, that's where the hair kind of stands up in the back of your neck for the size of something that's, it's massive. Now, when you're in an area, you have to look at what's nearby, what other major mines occurred and exist, and how do you relate. The one that's closest that we draw a lot of comparisons to right now, there's a few of them, but one is called Las Bambas. And what's important about Las Bambas, first of all, it sold for $7.3 billion in the same year we sold Canada in 2014. I believe $5.8 billion of the transaction was for the actual metal content. Now, at this part of the belt, they had copper and molybdenum. We have copper and gold. And so obviously gold is worth a lot more than molybdenum. And, we see a potential for the same scale of a deposit, but with gold instead of moly or molybdenum as a secondary metal. Now, that being said, we did go, and having confidence in Sombrero last year, we screened 8,000 square kilometers. We took samples on it last year, and we staked the best of what we could find in the region. And the whole reason why we even got Sombrero is because there is some cover. Some imagined volcanoes erupted thousands of years, millions of years ago, and the volcanic ash covered a lot of rocks. So there isn't a lot of outcropping rocks in the region, just a few windows like we see at Sombrero. And, we were first movers. We've seen Bebek show show up Fresnillo's there. I've heard Sumitomo staking ground as well as Teck. And a lot of the big guys have come into the region now, and we're certainly under the microscope. So, if I was to summarize Sombrero, take the big 300-kilometer belt opportunity at Committee Bay, take the potential of 3 or 4, 5+ million-ounce discoveries, and look at it in a southern climate with access year-round, with power lines running over the property, a highway to the property, and structures identified to date that compare in size to a mine that was bought out for $7.3 billion back in 2014. And, for me, the targeting doesn't get much better than that. I think Michael Henriksen had a good comment in his quote where he said, and this wears a lot of weight because of his peers are all former Newmont geologists. They said this ranks, I believe, as one of the best pre-drilling targets they've seen in their careers. And that's a heavy statement from them because their careers extend a lot longer than mine. And, I think if you read a bit further into his quote, you hear the word clarity a lot. And I'd say the one challenge in Committee Bay is there isn't clarity. It's tough. You're going through cover and you're reading which way the gold came from soils that had ice moving on top of soils.
Sure,
but in Peru, when the guys talk about clarity, it's samples are taking at surface. It's very, very simple, important geological lines of evidence that are adding up to a very, very clear target. And so for me, if Committee Bay hits or not, we fall back on one of the best South American, drill targets that I think a lot of us have seen in our careers on the team. So it's pretty exciting.
It really is exciting. I'm really looking forward to drill results coming from Committee Bay and Homestake, but most of all, I think this Sombrero thing it's really a reason to own some shares. The upside could be spectacular, no doubt about it. Well, thank you very much. We're out of time. Thank you for updating us on this very, very good story. I hope my listeners will go to the website and check it out because it's definitely worth it, or subscribe to my letter because I'll certainly be commenting on it as results come out. Thank you so much for being with us again, and we'll look to do it again sometime in the near future.
Thanks so much, Jay. Really appreciate the time. Thank you.